So Joe and I had a talk earlier for my work. Like part of my work is, having like a one-on-one with people and just finding out their background and like how they came to their political views and whatnot. So we had a good little talk about that. Something that they call a story of self is like how you came to be, thinking like your thoughts and all that. And so Jody was like, yeah, you do it. We could do it earlier, and then we could record it later, so it'll already be kind of rehearsed. And I was like, okay, we could do that. And then there's just other stuff to talk about too. So that was the loose basis of us saying we would connect later on today. But yeah,
so I'm actually intruding.
No, you're not. That's not the way. That's not the way it works.
What's that?
No, that's not the way it works. I mean, we're all like, we're kind of like a collective. A, B, he's not here, which is like, I know that these things work that way. So like, if I invite someone to like talk, it's like fully knowing that this could happen. I might end up getting up with somebody else instead. So it's all in the collective. That's all what it is. So you're definitely not intruding. But yeah, there's some interesting things going on. Joey is saying he's ready.
That's not the way it works. No, you're not intruding. You can't get out of this one.
Did you happen to see the picture?
Huh?
Did you happen to see the picture that I sent to the group?
The picture of what?
You'll have to see. I'll let you take a look.
Where'd you send it?
It's the group, the big group.
Main group?
Yeah, main group.
The picture of carrot juice?
Yeah.
So I need to see this because?
Well, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's kind of like the running joke, I guess. But there's something.
You gotta clue me in on the joke.
Well, I mean, they're just always, kind of trying to insinuate that I'm like a Karen for like complaining about my stepped on carrot cake.
Oh yeah.
And Cynthia's whole thing is she would have eaten it and blah blah blah. So there's something about this. What's that?
Why would she do that?
Why would she have eaten it?
Yeah.
Because she really likes carrot cake, and she's like, I think she has a very like I'm a person who's not wasteful. I'm like the king of not being wasteful. I'll actually go out of my way to find someone who can eat something that I can't, whether it's because of my dietary needs or whatever. But she, I think, this is just my assumption. This is just my powers of observation. I think she is someone who really, really, really doesn't like waste. And so for her, it's like, oh, there was nothing wrong with that cake. It was stepped on, but it was still intact. Right? And I'm like, well, you could.
Funny because are we being recorded right now?
Yeah.
Oh, then never mind. I'll reserve my comment.
Oh, wait, let me pause it then. Okay. Yeah, I feel like a Karen will see someone minding their own business, having their own barbecue, hanging with their own people, and snoop and see what they're doing and try to
Well, see, I call that a Nancy because the original application of Karen first was just to denote someone from a specific generation. Then the second connotation became someone who's overtly sensitive about things, i.e., I need to speak to your manager.
Okay, so you're saying a Karen was just originally someone from a different generation.
Yeah, when it literally, when Karen first came out at the beginning, towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, hold on.
Got some crazy echoes going on.
You hear me, right?
I can hear you. You're a little bit in the background, but I hear you.
I had taken out my headphones for a second. So when
Oh,
it first
that's
came
fine.
out, it was just the current generation's way of describing the generations before boomers.
Okay.
That's
before
literally what the term was.
before boomers.
No, not before, after boomer. Because that term "okay boomer" came out, and people took it as a negative slight. The current generation started saying "okay boomer," and then the generation that came right after boomers, they started calling them Karen. So like our
Okay.
generation,
I didn't know that.
the Karen generation. That's actually where the first usage came. I mean,
Oh, that's
we're
our
talking,
generation.
yeah, our generation.
Okay.
And I used to joke about it, like, I don't mind. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't offensive at all. Like, they're calling boomers, and, I remember making a post like, okay, little Ted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, to the young generation, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't care. It was a joke. And
Yeah.
it was a joke, and part of the pathway was the okay boomer, and that was, we're talking like end of 2019 going into 2020. And then Karen very quickly evolved. It had the fastest evolution to something almost political. You understand what I'm saying? Like it quickly evolved from being a term for a generation of people, our generation in particular, to being something overtly negative in regards to like an attitude that a person has as it applies not just to their attitude, but in some cases political. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because Karens can be on any side of the political spectrum. They can be liberal. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And the most distinguished attribute of a Karen is the whole idea, which even is the whole idea of, I want to speak to your manager. Like, that's the most recognizable quote that goes along with a Karen.
Right.
I want to speak to your manager. I'm mad that my coffee's a little too hot. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
It's almost a caricature of someone who's like overtly sensitive. So in the political spectrum, I mean, it applies to people in the political spectrum, which is the reason why I refer to Nancy's, because I used to say "okay Nancy" long before Karen to describe people like that. But I changed my definition of Nancy to accommodate Karen. And so for me, my definition of Nancy is a nosy Karen, meaning a Karen who comes across the street to get in an argument with you because you're having a barbecue.
Right.
You know what I mean? She gets up, looks out her window, sees you having the barbecue, comes outside, and you know what I mean?
Speaking of barbecue, did you hear about what happened in New York like a day or so ago? I guess a baby got killed like late night or overnight, like at a barbecue.
Somebody got killed?
A baby.
A baby got killed at a barbecue?
Yeah.
How's that happen?
Let's see. What were the specifics? This kind of came into conversation as I was talking to my folks and we were doing the "how are things going" kind of thing, and they had mentioned a dead baby shot in Brooklyn, but I was like, wait, I thought there was a dead baby in Atlanta. And so then we ended up switching stories, and it was like they had an 8-year-old that got killed, but we actually had a 1-year-old.
Oh, that's pretty sad.
5 more people shot in Brooklyn hours after 1-year-old boy gunned down while sitting in his stroller.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
That's really, really sad. I'm not going to say anything jerkish. Don't worry. Normally I would. This time I'm not. Because the kid was only one. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just have to say that every once in a while because I don't necessarily know when my headphones are going to short out on me.
Right.
Yeah, I'm about to get off of this. You can pause it if you want, because I'm gonna get off and I'm gonna call you.
Okay.
Because I'm running to the store real quick, so I'll
Sure.
call you.
Okay.
I'm gonna call you right now.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
You.
Unmute.
Yep. So, what's up?
Not much.
Another episode of On Some Ish, On That Ish.
Mm-hmm. On
So,
that
what's the deal?
ish. Oh, you know, the world is a crazy place.
Yeah, that is true. What's up with Joe? Nothing.
I mean, we'll hear from Joe if he's, coming in.
Yeah, I wish we could have got some KD action going on. I definitely want to. I was serious when I said that whole KD's conspiracies. I'm feeling that.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I'm feeling that whole concept. I don't know that he'd be so happy with that.
Really?
Yeah. Right? Because he might see it as like us not taking him seriously and kind of having fun at his expense.
Possibly.
And especially because you know how I can be.
Oh, right. You can be that way.
Yeah. Even when I don't intend to.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I'll talk to him about it. He's an actor. He should be able to,
Take a few lumps.
yeah, like, listen, I'm gonna need you to do this, and you might have to take some lumps in the process. But it's all love. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's all love. So what's on the docket, man? What's been going on?
Well, on the docket, what has been going on? There's babies dying. People blaming BLM. The guy in Atlanta whose 8-year-old daughter got shot said, I thought Black Lives mattered, and then I don't know if that was his only reference to BLM, maybe not, but there
Yeah,
seems to be
I
some
did see
blaming
that.
Mhm. Some
I
blaming
don't
of
know that,
BLM there, right?
I don't know that that was fair.
No, I don't think it was. That's definitely not what BLM stands for. It's shooting people up who are, I don't know. I heard the story was they were going towards a barricade and turned around.
So what about the 23-year-old white girl who was shot that they're saying her and her boyfriend got in an altercation with some Black Lives Matter people, which is
Where?
interesting. And I want to say something about that. So they said Black Lives Matter. She said all lives matter. They pulled out guns. Her boyfriend pulled out guns. They diffused the situation, and the guy went on a bridge and shot and killed her. Now, one thing I want to say is, just like we talked recently about confusing a movement with the organization,
Mm-hmm.
you can't take every Black person that says Black Lives Matter and then when they do something stupid or dumb, say that it was Black Lives Matter.
Right, exactly.
Blame the entire movement or even the organization because some guy who decided to say Black Lives Matter did some dirt.
Right.
which is what I'm seeing is happening. And I mean, it's a good strategy. It should be the strategy. It would be the strategy if I were calling the shots, right? Like, that's what I would do. If I was trying to strategize against a movement or an organization such as Black Lives Matter, that would be my strategy. Like, okay, what we're gonna do is anyone who's protesting or anyone who happens to say those words are going to be representative of the movement when they do
Yeah, I mean,
something shady.
they're many steps ahead of you. I've been playing this game for a long time.
Right.
The president's already said he could consider them, a terrorist group or whatever he said about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. And I mean, I get it.
and their Black Lives Matter, um, what do you call them? Murals are being destroyed. People are
Oh yeah.
defacing them. Yeah. Meanwhile, they have permission to paint those, right?
Yeah,
They're
I
not just
saw the
going to let.
one being destroyed by like 2 people trying to paint over it in the streets.
Yeah, that was one. And then I don't know if that's the same one that I saw a picture of today that was defaced.
Hmm. Hmm. I wonder, you know, obviously it wasn't going to take long because, I saw a video of an older white woman who had apparently got to an altercation with another black woman while they were driving, and the older white woman called the black woman a nigger and then got upset and decided to go fill out a police report because she called the black woman a nigger. So the black woman, got out the car at the police station, started recording, followed her in, and before the lady could get in, she just had this breakdown. And she's like, the black woman was like, "You're having a breakdown and you're going to fill out a police report because you called me a nigger." And she was like, "Yeah, I called you a nigger." She was like, and she wasn't screaming at her spitefully when she said, "Yeah, I called her a nigger." She was like, "Because I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of the protest." Like she started full Karen, like full Karen.
Yeah,
"I'm so tired of the protest and the unrest, and I'm just so tired of it all. I moved out here because I wanted to be closer to you," and all kind of stuff. She literally went into the police station and like put her head down on the counter. I was like, I just can't take it. I'm just so tired of it all.
they started hugging her and asking
No,
her if she was okay.
no, they didn't even assist her at that point or at any point that I saw in the video. But the black woman was like, "You're tired. We've been tired for 420 years." You know,
Mhm.
you could pretty much guess how it played out, with the
Yeah,
dialogue. But I didn't expect that the woman was just gonna break down. She called her a nigger because she was tired.
yeah.
Like, picture this. Like, you're tired. So
I was
that's why
doing
you called.
part of the work I was doing today was sending out texts for a group that is comprised of Black women and Black, what they call GNC, gender nonconforming folks. And some of the texts that I got back from people were interesting because, the assumption is we're texting people who we think are Black, and some of the people who text you back and tell you you have the wrong number, have some interesting things to say, like, "Oh, Black women have it good. They have good jobs here. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you're saying you don't have it good or whatever." I guess they're assuming I'm a Black woman because I'm sending out the text or whatever. But yeah, pretty interesting.
And these were black people?
No, 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 no. Some of these were wrong numbers. Some of these were wrong numbers.
Mm, mm. So Well, they decided to respond argumentatively.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, argumentatively. So, what were some of the responses
No, just like
outside of
just what I was saying, just saying that, black women have it good, or I don't know why you're deciding to kiss these black people's asses, and blah blah blah, stuff like that, like some nasty stuff like that.
people are angry?
Yeah,
Is it justifiable?
I mean, I guess that depends on what you mean by justifiable.
Just
I
that.
mean, I mean, no. My answer is no. It's not justifiable. But if you're the angry person, you don't think that.
I mean, it's a question. Couldn't let it go unasked.
I mean, like I said before. I mean, people are very good at manipulating people. So all you have to find is a button to push, or someone who's like frustrated with how things are going in general, or their lot in life, and it's not going to be hard to, like, push a button and get someone to be pissed at someone else.
Hmm. I wonder though, how far this is going to go. At this point, right, there have been some very minor and specific areas legislative changes, but for the most part, it's been cosmetic. So I wonder how far this is going to go, how
Well,
it's actually going to play out.
we've got some people that were just voted in that have some pretty strong platforms that they ran on. And Lord knows I was straightforward with those platforms when I was talking to people on the phone. And they still got voted in. So you got people talking.
So you were talking in support of these platforms?
Yeah, we're talking people talking reconstruction, reparations, and like actually filling in the wealth gap between young black folks and young white folks, and pretty strong platform of truth and reconciliation and reparations.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so give me some examples.
And it's a whole long platform. I've shared it with you a couple times, but one of it includes giving kids $1,000 like their first year, and then $2,000 each year until they turn 18, so that our kids like have some money to start off with. And then truth and reconciliation is basically like it's like a major um, it's a major look and what do you call it, research into exactly how much is owed to black folks, and like exactly how we will divvy it out and that kind of thing. It's like it's what they did in South Africa before they ended up with reparations down there, and like giving land to black folks, and what they did in other countries that had similar issues. Um, Hold on, I'll look this up.
Yeah, who are some of the people that ran and won?
Mondale, Mondaire Jones is another one. He's like, he'll be like the first black gay representative. He's representing like the Westchester area and what is it, Westchester and some other part. I'm forgetting the name of it, but other parts of quote unquote upstate New York, but not really. Yeah, Mondaire Jones, he's another big one. He's got a strong platform.
Now, what position did he run for and win?
Jamal ran for Congress and won.
Okay. Power to him.
Yeah, so Reconstruction Agenda, it's time for us to root out the racism that's been part of this country since the very beginning. We must confront the question of whether America can blah, blah, blah. I'll just see if I can get to the juicy parts. But these are the kind of candidates that like are pushing for stuff like decarceration and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the same model on the transitional justice approach in Germany, South Africa, and Rwanda. Shifting funding and resources from police departments, jails, and prisons to new agencies designed to protect public health. So yeah, it sounds like abolition. Both prison and police. Dramatically reduce our jail and prison population by ending the school to prison pipeline, lengthy sentencing and mandatory minimums, cash bail, onerous parole requirements, the war on drugs, new jail and prison construction, mass deportation, and the use of private prisons in the detention centers.
So
Medicare for all, housing justice, free college and canceling student debt, investing in public schools, Green New Deal, tax the rich, expand labor unions and Social Security, baby bonds. That's what I was telling you about. $1,000 for the first year and $2,000 per year until the child turns 18, addressing inequality and the racial wealth gap in this country.
baby bonds, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, these are the kind of folks that we were excited about electing, and this is like what we want to replicate throughout the country.
I wonder how well, I mean, if that gets something like that gets approved, how well it's going to go over.
Well, I mean, he's in the Bronx. He's got a lot of folks who are going to benefit from this, folks that voted for him.
Yeah, but I mean, still legislation has to be approved. I'm curious if it is approved, how well it's going to go over. You got a lot of people who, they complain about having to pay an unemployment.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's for the area that he represents, right?
Oh, okay. So it's not national.
Right.
But the hopes would be that this would be nationwide.
Sure. And we've won in other places too. They had some major wins in California, including a DA who was like, for all this stuff that we're talking about, decarceration.
Okay. I'm actually I mean, I don't live there, so I don't reap the benefits of that, but I'm excited. I'm hopeful for people that live there. Is this for minorities as a whole, or are we talking just black people?
I mean, he's a congressperson, so everyone is going to benefit from it. It's not like he can just. Um,
Discriminate based on preference?
you're talking about the baby bonds thing, in
Yes.
specifically, or everything
Yep.
he's about?
I'm talking about the baby bond. Because that's the thing I think, if used properly, is
Yeah,
going to have the best impact.
right. Yeah, I don't know how much detail it has beyond what I read there. I don't know if it goes into detail that the baby bond is for everyone or if it's just for, minorities or what have you.
What area of New York is he?
But he's in the Bronx, and
And
I think
where's AOC?
in the Bronx.
Okay. So I take it they'll be working together on some stuff.
Yeah, I would hope so. Um, yeah, I would hope so.
Did she endorse or support him?
I believe so. Yes, and also he got a shit ton of endorsements. Anyone uh, endorsed him. Everyone from Bernie to AOC to any like progressive person that's like been making any noise or that you've heard of. All the groups too. A lot of groups endorsed him. The New York State Nurses Association, New York State Nurses, Justice Democrats, of course, the Working Families, Sunrise Movement, Make the Road, the Jewish Vote, Move On, New York Communities for Change, Community Voices, Democratic Socialists of America, Yemen American Association, Food and Water Action, bunch of groups, and then a bunch of people who have clout. Katie Porter uh,
Really?
endorsed him. Yep.
Okay.
Ayanna Pressley, Elizabeth Warren,
I mean, that's all
Bernie.
you had to tell me.
Yeah.
All you had to do is tell me Katie Porter.
Yep.
I mean, for the purposes of, in the interest of the listeners or anyone that may view this, you probably could continue, but for me, Katie Porter was enough.
Yep. Zephyr Teach Out, for folks who know who that is, that's a big one. Tiffany Caban, she was she works for WFP now. She was like one of the first DAs that we endorsed who was going up against the machine. She lost by like a very, very, very small margin. They had to like do a recount. Naomi Klein, that's a big one.
Naomi Klein.
Klein, she's a writer.
Okay.
She wrote Shock Doctrine, which I highly recommend.
Break it
It's a
down.
great book. It
Break it
just
down.
basically talks about how, in order for America to get what it wants, it often has to wait until there's either a great catastrophe or like a shock and awe kind of like bombing of a place that like really gets people to the point where there's they're in such shock They don't know what's going on. And so then the U.S. will negotiate with them, like, hey, we'll help you rebuild and, give you guys some food. You look like you could use it, but we're going to want things unfavorably in our favor when it comes to trade and like future things with your country. And it's like, we don't know what to do. We're like hemorrhaging like major wounds here. Like, we'll do anything just to survive. Oh, cool. So make a deal with the devil then. That's pretty much what that book is about. It's about like some of the awful things we've done in many different countries, and some of the awful dictators that we backed, even though we say we're for democracy and all that. Like, we've backed evil dictators and like the Pinochets and awful people in Chile and other, uh, you know, other South American and Central American countries throughout the years in order to get leverage, in order to get like an economic advantage. If you ever hear someone talk about the Chicago School of Economics, it's talking about, this kind of like evil stuff, like an evil way to get your hooks into a country where you normally wouldn't be able to.
Give me a second. Give me a second, Flav.
Okay. It's all good.
So, anything from Joe?
No, I'll let you know if I hear something.
Oh, that's what we doing now, huh?
Well, it's not like I'm going to keep it a secret.
My bad, Mr. Principal.
I'll let you know.
My bad.
It's like
how
your version
dare
of,
I? How dare
like
I question if we're there yet?
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like your version of "Are we there yet?"
Yeah.
I also
how dare me?
I also reached out to JD directly. Did not get a response from him.
To whom?
KD.
Oh, I thought you said JD.
No, that would have been weird.
Yeah. Like who? Who's JD?
No idea.
Say again?
I said no idea.
Yeah, that would have been weird.
Yeah.
Yo, we gotta set up another, not specifically Wu-Tang, but Wu-Tang-esque show.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, we gotta set up
definitely.
another one at some point. Not necessarily Wu-Tang, but we could
just
definitely.
hip-hop in general.
Yeah, so speaking of shows, right?
Okay.
I know you didn't watch Warrior Nun.
No.
You know I'm gonna bring up comic shows, but you did watch Old Guard.
I did.
So, another lesser known comic book adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
I see everybody's loving this movie.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
I thought it was great. I watched it twice.
Okay.
I watched it twice. I picked up the series sometime before the movie came out, because I was in the shop and he had copies of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew what the movie was going to be about. I actually know what the sequel is going to be about, because the second series of the comic is currently out.
Oh,
like
okay.
issue 4 of 6. Actually,
Okay.
number 5 comes out next week. It's called Force Multiplied.
Okay. Don't ruin it for me.
Comic.
Yeah. Don't ruin the. Don't tell me what it's going to be about.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil it at all.
There will be spoilers on this though, for people who haven't seen Old Guard though, right?
Yeah, there'll be spoilers for sure, because
so well,
we've seen it. We're
spoiler
going to
alert.
talk about it, but I'm not going to
we've seen it.
spoil. I'm not going to
Spoiler
spoil
alert.
Force Multiplied at all because
Yeah,
you haven't seen it.
right.
But this particular movie, it was actually great. Charlize Theron is, in my opinion, one of the most bankable action stars in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, and we found out something interesting about you. Well, actually, I had known it about you because you had mentioned it before. But once an actor hasn't done something for a year, you're kind of like, who is this person? And
No, that's
why
not
are they
true.
still bankable?
That is not true. I don't know where you got that from.
Remember you forgot, who'd you forget?
Brad Pitt.
Actor. Yeah, you forgot all about Brad Pitt.
Yeah, because Brad Pitt hadn't done anything except one movie in years.
Oh, years with an
Yeah.
S. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was just a year.
No, years with an S. Right.
Okay.
Like he was off the radar until he did the Quentin Tarantino movie, which didn't put him back on the radar.
Was he really off?
Yeah.
Oh, he really wasn't doing stuff?
He wasn't doing anything. I believe he did like a Netflix film or something like that. I think the last thing he did was the early part of like 2011 or 12 or somewhere around there that I'm aware of. I see a movie on Netflix that's dated like 2013, but since then he just hasn't been in anything. That's why I said he's done. And what I mean by he's done, like he's not done. Obviously, any actor can come out and, do a bunch of films and be right back. Adam Sandler was pretty much done, and then he does Uncut Gems, and you understand what I'm saying? But Uncut Gems was a mega hit. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about Adam Sandler, though. First of all, this is not coming from a fan of his, but he's a production guy. That guy's filthy rich from doing his own movies, so he's kind of in a different.
But what has he done in this decade?
A bunch of shit that's made him a shit ton of money?
Not in this decade. He did in the early half of 2000s with Chris Rock and, the guy from
he's still been doing
King
stuff.
Of Queens.
He's
like
still
what?
been doing stuff that's been on Netflix, and like I said, I'm not a fan, so I don't know the names. I just see his face pop up all over the place every time I ignore another movie. He's done.
Okay, maybe so. I know he did that ensemble film with Chris Rock that had a part 1 and a part 2.
Was that some kind of Western or something?
Say again?
Is that some kind of Western?
No.
Oh, okay. So he did that too. He did some kind of Western.
What?
Mm-hmm. He's done a bunch of stuff. Yep.
No.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do a Western.
It might have been called like The Six or something. Some kind of Western spoof or whatever.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're confusing him with like Seth MacFarlane.
No, never. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know of a Western that Adam Sandler did.
Well, I'm about to show you.
Google Talks, right?
Yep, Google Talks. All right. Well, he did Grown Ups in 2010.
Mm-hmm. I think he did like two of those films.
Okay. He did Jack and Jill in 2011.
Yeah, I remember that.
He did Blended in 2014. He did Just Go.
Nobody watched.
He did Just Go With It in 2011. And then, yeah, you're right, Grown Ups 2. He did, The Ridiculous Six, a Western, 2015.
Okay.
And that was
aside
like
of Grown Ups 1 and 2, like Jack and Jill was a flop. Nobody watched Just Go With It. I don't even think anyone heard of that movie. I know Jack and Jill was a flop. I remember it as his twin sister who was like him.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was a flop. Just Go With It. I don't think anyone even. I don't even know what that is, and I'm an Adam Sandler fan. Like I'd never
Well,
heard.
it could be a chick flick.
Okay, either way, it was a flop. And he did Grown Ups 1 and Grown Ups 2. So we're talking what? Well, his last film was 2015.
Okay, so it's okay. So technically, okay. So what's the definition of a flop?
I mean, I guess there's more than one definition, right? It could be a
I don't
film
know.
that's not a box office success, but it could be a film that makes its money back, but makes its money back. It breaks even or better, a little better. That's a
Okay.
flop to me.
All right. Well, I
If you're
don't
just
know.
making your money back or just doing a little bit better than breaking even, that's a flop to me.
Okay.
That means that people
So
didn't
he
show
more
up in
than
droves to watch the film.
he more than doubled. He did like two and a half times his money back.
What did he spend on the film?
He spent 80 million.
So he got what, 240?
He made 215 million.
Okay, so yeah, not it wasn't a commercial success.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy like him, he produces these movies and he makes money off of them. So that's another 115. No, my bad. That's another 135 mil for him
Well, it's not good. That's
right
not
there.
going in his pocket. He's got to pay people.
Well, it says the budget's 80 mil.
Yeah,
Right?
he's still got to
You don't
pay.
think that's not including
Well,
what he has to pay?
yeah, it all depends on what the contracts are, right? Are they getting net or gross? It all depends on who the actors are and what their contracts are. I'm
Well,
sure he saw a profit, but when Adam Sandler produces a movie, right? Here's how it works. Because 80 million is a lot of money. So the odds are it wasn't 80 million of Adam Sandler's dollars. Adam Sandler is the most recognizable name of the people that produced the film. You know, when Spike Lee goes and produces a movie, he gets partners, he gets people to invest, although it is to their benefit that Spike Lee says he's producing the film, right? It doesn't mean that there aren't 3 or 4 other people investing in that.
yeah.
That aren't getting are going to get production credits. It's just to their Spike Lee's the guy. So it's to our benefit when Spike Lee comes to us and says, "Hey, I got this film. I want to produce it. I need 20 million from you. And I need 20 from you." And it's going to be a Spike Lee joint. I think it's hot. My name's going to be on it. That's kind of how it works. Because 80 million is just a lot to cough up for one person. Even if you're rich, who wants to just drop 80 million and take that risk by themselves? So normally,
But you know what? That's my bad. He actually co-produced this one,
again,
so that's not even he co-produced it. So that's
well,
whatever.
most films are co-produced, but the most recognizable person is the person who's gonna get the credit. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Most
But
films are co-produced.
but yeah, my point is with Adam Sandler is he's made a lot of money producing films, and it's not like you think of
I
him
think
as like
he's made more
producing
money.
these.
I think he's made more money being in films than he has producing films. Not that he hasn't made money producing films. I mean, at one point he was making 20 million a film and probably getting production credits and total gross. Getting more money based upon how much. Like if he does a film, right? What I mean by total gross, I'm confusing total gross and total net. But what I mean is sometimes actors will, like Tom Cruise, for instance, will get paid a certain amount of money for a film, but contractually, say the film makes 100 million or makes 200 million, he's also going to get more money based upon how much the film nets. or grosses, which I can't remember which one is bigger, gross and then net profit. Net is what they keep. So total gross. So he's also going to get a percentage based off of total gross. And that's by contract. Not everybody has that contract, but big time actors will negotiate that into their contract. Like, I'm not just going to get 20 million for this film. This is a $500 million film. I want more money, and I want it in my contract. I want a percentage of total gross. So Adam Sandler, as a $20 million actor at one point, he was one of the top paid in Hollywood. He was making 20 million a film. He was in that 20 million group. He probably was able, and because he produces, he probably was able, a lot of times he'd probably walk into a project and put his own money behind it. And then he'd say, oh, I'm making an assumption here, but this is a logical assumption. Then he'd say, I want total gross. I don't just want what you're paying me for the film. If the film is, you know, a hit, a huge hit and a huge success, I then want to be able to make a percentage of total gross. So I would venture to say that Adam Sandler made more money off of his films than he did off of producing films. That is not to say that he didn't profit off producing films.
Did you know he was in the Cosby Show?
I did not.
He was Theo Huxtable's friend back in '87 and from '87 to '88.
Oh, cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool. I didn't know that at all. I just know that until Uncut Gems, listen, you have a very short shelf life in Hollywood. That doesn't mean that you can't have a resurgence at any given time. All you have to do is take the right role, get the right person to cast you, take the right role, and boom, you're back. But you have a short shelf life in Hollywood. Hollywood's always looking for that next X Factor person. And, you know, if you don't do a film, if you're not someone who, very few people in Hollywood, right, can take off for 4 years and still be in demand. That doesn't mean there aren't people. It's just very few. A Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is going to be in demand. He's probably the only actor, which is weird. The reason why Tom Cruise can always be in demand is because Tom Cruise is the only actor in Hollywood that can walk into a production company or to a movie studio and guarantee $100 million movie.
Right.
Like, he's the only actor that can literally guarantee $100 million film. I believe Keanu Reeves has just moved into that position, which would make him the second actor in Hollywood that can guarantee but look how long it took Keanu Reeves to get there.
Right.
Tom Cruise can literally, and has for a long time. So tomorrow, if he wants to do a film, they're going to sign him up for it. Because he can walk into a movie studio or a production company and his name alone guarantees you $100 million film. He's just had too many of them for them not to bank on him. It's the reason why he's the head of the Screen Actors Guild and arguably the most powerful person in Hollywood. From an actor's perspective. Yeah, Tom Cruise. From an actor's perspective. Yeah, absolutely. He's been that since like the early 2000s. The top dude in Hollywood. Like, if actors had a president, he's it. Seriously. Head of the Screen Actors Guild, all of that. Scientology goes a long way, buddy.
Guess so. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's, for the longest time, that's why he was the most bankable, because he could literally get you $100 million film. All the Mission Impossibles. Like, he could straight up just walk into a studio, put his name on a film, and they look at it as a guarantee, we're going to make $100 million on this film.
Are we talking about Tom Cruise here?
Yeah. I like the blazer.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought I would try to go for a bit of a...
My man, Joe.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, bro?
Going pretty good. Were you guys just talking about Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely a hot shot back in the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like the president of the biggest. I know he was the head of the Screen Actors Guild, the whole nine. Like, Flav didn't.
You started cutting out. Ish. You're cutting out now. Fish,
which is yes.
you're cutting out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that Flav didn't know. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
How much weight Tom Cruise's name carried in Hollywood? He was the top guy, like the
No, I mean, I
head of
know
the
that
Screen
Tom
Actors
Cruise is,
Guild.
I know that
Whole
Tom
nine.
Cruise is like a big deal. I just didn't know that he was the head of
Yeah,
SAG or anything.
Yeah, he's the top dog.
It's a lot like Mel Gibson in a way, in that, you know, before the whole Me Too thing, the problem with Tom Cruise, Tom Cruise and Mel Gibson is they both had great careers until they just revealed themselves to be completely insane.
But the problem is Tom Cruise can still get a movie production company $100 million. Not the problem. He can still, like, he can do a Jack Ryan and get 100 mil.
Really? Is he in that Jack Ryan series? I haven't watched that.
Yeah, the last Jack Ryan movie was Tom Cruise.
Oh, no kidding. See, I didn't even know there had been, you know, I thought it was just the Amazon series, but okay. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't really realize he was still a big thing, to be honest. I mean, I just remember, you know, him having a blockbuster pretty much every summer in, you know, when I was a kid and in my early teens.
Yeah, he had a blockbuster like every year.
Mm-hmm.
$100 million movie every year. He's no money than Tom Cruise.
Yeah, Minority Report, War of the Worlds, all the Mission Impossibles.
All the Mission Impossibles.
Yeah, I think Minority Report was a great movie. I remember
It was.
seeing that in theaters.
It was. It was a really, really great movie.
Yeah. I just love, I love high concept sci-fi like that.
Did my mic short?
No, you know, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, Mike. Like no one in Hollywood made Hollywood more money than Tom Cruise.
Yeah. One thing that amazes me about Minority Report is, in some sense, we've seen that future come to pass in some ways. Like when you look at micro targeting, when you look at like advertising that's so sophisticated, it almost can, you know, predict with an algorithm what you're going to do in the future based on your super micro demographic. I mean, it almost seems like it's a matter of time before we get to a point where they could have algorithms predicting when someone's going to commit a crime. I mean, if you look at Cambridge Analytica during Brexit or during Trump's election, it's really freaky how much they sliced and diced the electorate.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. You know, there's that saying in some circles, right? That science fiction becomes science fact.
Yeah, I would say that's very true.
And Star Trek.
Say again?
So especially Star Trek.
Simpsons, right?
We should be so lucky because Star Trek seems like a utopia.
Well, right, yeah, definitely. Except for Fridays.
I mean, they achieved world peace on Earth and then left the planet.
And don't even have paper current, and don't even have like a currency anymore. It's really amazing that in the height of the Cold War era, they got a series made on American television that essentially depicted a future almost anarcho-communist society.
With representation all over the place, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was probably one of the most revolutionary TV series ever.
Yep.
Well, you know, what's interesting is even in the later Star Treks, they still run into many different societies who are operating, you know, on different spectrums, different levels. Many warlike societies and many societies where theocracy is a thing, and like they're pretty much going through all the issues that we've gone through either in our past or present. Sometimes I kind of wonder, I'm like, would you really be running into societies like this that are so advanced in some ways, but primitive in others?
I think so.
Societies that are like able to like achieve what ostensibly those societies have been able to achieve.
Absolutely, because I think it just kind of goes to how the universe is vast, and if there is intelligent life out there, they may very well be at a different stage of civilization, at a different stage of evolution, either more advanced than us or less advanced than us. So I thought that was actually one of the most interesting and one of the most plausible aspects of the series. I mean, I think I think it would be more implausible if you had a sci-fi series that just showed every other society in the universe as being on the same time scale, because that's
enlightened across the board.
Yeah, that's
no. I certainly agree. I guess my point is, if they're able to achieve, flights of fancy, and if they're able to like get off of their planet and kind of like traverse the universe, then wouldn't they be enlightened in other ways? Certainly, like if we go to a planet where they've never seen other people or they've never gotten off of their own planet, then that makes a lot of sense. But sometimes I have to question, some of these warlike beings who are like,
well, think about it, Mike. When you look at if you look at it from a story perspective, right, and you start to add color to, like, if I were writing it, right, there would be different stimuli at play. So while what we might consider an advancement to an alien species, it may be advanced. However, there's different stimuli at play that affects them, that we might not understand, which could lead to them being, warlike, or maybe they built their advancements on the backs of a subservient race. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe they survival of the fittest, so to speak, or adapt and overcome. So maybe they created this advancement in order to survive a threat, to overcome a threat.
Yeah, and to add on to that, technological advancement does not equal moral advancement.
Right. I was going to say exactly that.
People, people have all sorts of rationalizations for why a particular system, why a particular society is justified. I mean, you look at guys right now, CEOs in Silicon Valley, who will basically automate entire industries out of existence just on the theory of disruption. And these are pretty intelligent people.
That happened in the turn of century America.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
but
exactly.
Doesn't this also lead to the
one
fall
guy
of
killed
empires?
The steel industry in Pennsylvania? Like, he killed it.
Yeah, but doesn't that kind of thinking also lead to the fall of empires in the first place?
It may eventually, but the thing is, the people who are benefiting from the incentive structure of the moment, who are making good money, are not necessarily thinking about the long term. I mean, look at how Exxon Mobil and the oil companies have known that climate change has existed for decades. I mean, Big Tobacco knew that smoking.
Well, no. This is my point. I'm agreeing with you. What I'm saying is, by the time we get to a Star Trek, we are looking at the long term, right?
Okay, but Mike,
for a lot of these species.
But
okay,
Mike, here's an example, though. Mike, here's an example. So if you look at, say, Enterprise, right, which, there are a lot, not Enterprise, Voyager, which there are a lot of great Star Trek shows. I'm partial to Voyager because it asked some of the most morally compromising questions.
Okay.
Like, the show just really, she was, in many cases, just morally compromised, and sometimes she made decisions based upon her feelings rather than it actually being the right thing to do.
Mhm.
She just did. And you know, there are several instances. Well, early on they encounter a species where one of the member of their crew, Kess, she's a member of this species, and this species is, it's almost a utopian society because they have a caretaker, which is what they call it, the caretaker. And this caretaker is almost like this godlike entity. And you know, for us, we might as well just describe it as an advanced life form that we just can't understand, right? Because you know, our advancements are based upon the best knowledge of the best people on our planet. We don't really have another bar to compare advancement to, right? Like we don't really have, if we meet a new species, then we'll be able to make a comparison. But that comparison isn't complete without a full understanding of all of the ways that that species exists and all of their other achievements or lack of achievements, right? We don't really have a full comparison. We might see something that is completely foreign and crazy to us, like something beyond what we have, but then they don't understand something as simple to us as the microwave, right? So getting back to this particular species that I'm talking about, this species didn't realize that it's kind of like you have a pet and you give the pet everything that, like I have a cat and I give my cat everything that it can want in life. So when I open the door to my house, the cat won't even run out. If I put my cat on the porch, my cat will whine until I let him back in the house. He won't move from the porch because he has no idea that he's essentially not really free, right? Like he doesn't have any concept of it. He won't run away. He wants to come back in the house because everything that he needs to keep him happy or content is in my house. This is how this species lived. They were completely content and they did not know that there was anything else because they had this caretaker, which was essentially to them like this godlike entity. You understand what I'm saying? And it was like this spherical entity that they refer to as the caretaker. And this caretaker provided everything that they needed. He protected them. He made sure they never had to deal with any enemies. Now, morally, was what this caretaker doing the right thing to do? There were a section of these people that wanted more, and they eventually end up leaving and going to like seek out and understand the rest of the universe and what else was out there and what else existed. So from a moral perspective, was this caretaker doing the right thing? Like he thought he was. I'm not saying he was doing the wrong thing. I'm just throwing this at you to say like what is really what really is advancement?
Well, my question would be, did was the caretaker taking care of these people against their will? Because then I would say it's unjustified. Like, did the people who wanted to leave have the freedom to?
Well, so here's the thing. They never knew whether it was against their will or not, because as long as they could remember, there was the caretaker. So they didn't even have the option of questioning whether it was against their will or not. Now
They didn't have
there
a
were people,
concept.
right? They didn't have the concept. Now there were people who started to feel like there was more, and we want to find out what more is, and they encountered opposition from the majority of their species who felt like this is like blasphemy. So then there was conflict. You understand what I'm saying? Which speaks to overall there had to be, now the caretaker wasn't bad. He wasn't bad at all. He genuinely cared about them. He wasn't like, this wasn't a bad entity at all. It wasn't. He genuinely cared about these people, but it also didn't understand what, you know, the concepts that we're talking about, things like free will. He didn't control them or force them. He just never made it.
This is really fascinating to me because this goes to a lot of philosophical debates and a lot of theological debates. Like, it seems to me as if the caretaker themselves is almost an analogy for God in a way, and debates between, you know, people who believe in free will and determinism.
Mm-hmm.
Or even other levels of
did
authority
represent.
in between.
There's
even other levels of authority, whether police or administrator or legislator or governor or what have you.
And it's interesting because that's what the caretaker represented to them. They didn't understand the concept of God, but they didn't really have to, right? Because that's what they had.
Well, did the caretaker? I mean? Well, did the caretaker reveal himself to them?
In various forms. I mean, they were aware of him. He would walk amongst them, but as like an old man.
Okay, that's interesting. So the caretaker then, rather than being a godlike figure that people have to take on faith, was almost like more of a benevolent, paternalistic dictator.
He was definitely a paternalistic dictator, and when the Starfleet crew got there, he did everything to circumvent them from unsettling the lives of I forget the name of the species, but unsettling them.
Oh, I think I remember this episode. I saw this. That was a classic. It's coming back to me now.
Yeah, it's like the first or second episode of Voyager.
Yeah, that's right. I'll have to watch this again because it's really I remember really enjoying that one.
Yeah. And they eventually meet the caretaker's other half because he was depressed because there were two of them. And she decided she no longer wanted to be with him after like a millennia of being with him, so she left. And she took several of their species with her. And you would find this out in like a few seasons later when they end up having to deal with her. And they don't really have to combat her, but they do have to deal with her. They do come into conflict with her because they find another species like Kes, who's a member of their crew, who had left with her. They left with her. Not with Kes, but with this the caretaker had pretty much a wife who was another entity that was like him. And she, in this episode that I was describing to you, where they first encounter him, he's in mourning because she left him.
Understandably so.
So, there was that. But, there's a series of books written by Madeline L'Engle.
The Wrinkle in Time series?
Yes.
Yeah, I think my dad read the first one of those to me when I was a kid. I would be interested to go back and read it as an adult.
Oh, you should read it. Brilliant series. And they introduce, especially for kids, all these complex philosophical concepts, like very complex concepts, but she writes it in such a way that kids and young adults can understand it. But it's like super deep stuff. Like, they encounter a species of people, an alien species, that don't have any eyes, ears, noses. They don't have any of that. But when they encounter these humans, these aliens are astounded that humans need eyes to see. That they actually need ears to be able to hear.
So they just have a set of senses in a way that is almost beyond human comprehension. Or if they have the same senses we do, they operate in a way that's beyond comprehension to us.
Yes. Like all of these things that we need mouths to speak were limitations to them. Like you're limited by your mouth. You're limited by your eyes because you can only see what you direct your eyes towards, which to them is a limitation. you know, there's a lot of concepts that Madeline Lingo explores in those 3 books about like the universe and the way things exist. And you know, the whole premise starts off, I think one of the first phrases they say is, Mrs. Who says there is such a thing as a tesseract, and that's like begins the whole premise of all 3 books.
I remember that. Yeah, that still has stuck with me since that line has stuck with me since I was probably 7 years old. So
Yeah, it's a strong line.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as a tesseract, and she just says it like offhandedly as she's cooking. You know what I mean? Which, you know, you definitely, if you get an opportunity, read those books. You know what I mean? Some of my
Definitely
3 of my
will, yeah.
favorite books. You know, that whole Time series, Wrinkle in Time, Wind in the Door, and A Swiftly Tilting Planet.
That's really cool. One thing I like about you, Ish, is that you still you still talk about a lot of books that that are you know probably written for kids, but still have very deep and profound meaning. Like you also mentioned, and maybe I'm perceiving this wrong, but you also mentioned Watership Down, which I'm guessing was a young adult reader. Like
No, Watership Down wasn't a young adult book. I just read it when I was a kid.
because I guess it seemed that way because it had bunny rabbits, but then again, that doesn't automatically mean kid like. I mean, Animal Farm also you know, it used animals to explore deeper political concepts. So yeah, but
Yeah, Watership Down is it can be, the cartoon, which was made by Hallmark, was I mean, it came on after prime time because there were some particularly scary and certainly graphic scenes.
yeah, I bet.
It's very stark. You know, every time I remember watching the cartoon when I was a kid, like, it bothered me. You know what I mean? Now I watch it. I mean, I love the cartoon, but it was an animated film. But it bothered me because there are some, you know, we're talking rabbits, so that medium is just like, you know, the shock value when you see things that you don't expect, because, you know, it's rabbits, right? And they got these British accents, and I mean real British accents. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
Oxford English. You know what I mean? So they got like these,
yeah.
you know, real British accents, and you know, I mean, they're graphic scenes, like
Kind of funny.
graphic scenes.
It almost seems like Family Guy could be a knockoff of that in a way, and having, you know, the dog that talks and like the talking baby who has Stewie who has a sophisticated British accent.
hmm No, these British accents though were it came off as particularly stark. See, because the cartoon is high drama, right? Like it's intense drama. So the entire premise is that these rabbits are pretty much, you know, their world, they've experienced the rabbit equivalent of an apocalypse, and they're looking for a new home. And the dangers that they face, like, these aren't like candy coated. Like, at any given moment, like, you know, there's an instance where, just, you know, the rabbit's running, and, you know, the dog breaks off the chain, and, you know, that rabbit's gone. Like, the dog snatches him up, you know, a couple shakes of his head, and you got a dead rabbit in the dog's mouth.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty disturbing to see when you're a kid.
Yeah, you know, and this was like over and over again. You know, when Big Wig got, you know, ensnared by the wire. You know what I mean? Or, you know, some of the fights that they had were just brutal and bloody.
Yeah.
Like, bloody fights where they're just like biting, like the cartoon didn't pull any punches, like they're ripping, you know, pieces chunks out of each other, and, you know what I mean,
Oh yeah.
slashing each other across the face, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
it's you know, like bloody stuff, you know what I mean,
Wow.
like
Okay. Yeah.
and so the book definitely was written for adults. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
it appealed
absolutely.
it appealed to children because there were rabbits, so you could find it in an elementary school. But when you actually, and it's a novel, like, we're
Yeah.
talking, you know, 400 pages. with a glossary in the back. You know what I'm saying? and,
Oh
and
yeah.
and and footnotes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think though that kind of to what I was saying about stuff that appeals to you when you're a kid, I think that something can be very powerful at that age and be written for kids to enjoy, but have it not, but it could just not only be something that kids would get something out of, but if you know, experience it as a kid, it might stick with you forever. Like the way I remember that line about the Tesseract. One thing that comes back to me every now and then when I'm in nature, when I'm walking through the woods, is I remember that Shel Silverstein book, The Giving Tree, which I had read to me as a kid, and I just remember it made me so upset. I just cried so hard, and I didn't even remember the plot, but I realized.
Which one by Shel Silverstein?
Giving Tree. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, about the kid who slowly hacks up a tree until there's nothing left. And I think about it every now and then when I'm in nature, and I realize it's because I think about climate change, and that book was really sort of an allegory for the environment. And I didn't even know that that's what it was about at the time. But I feel the message was so deep and so subliminal in a good way that it stuck with me because it hit me emotionally. And I think powerful art should hit you emotionally. I think you know, even as adults, we shouldn't lose our ability to feel something fully, to cry even when we're moved.
I agree. I'm still affected on that level by things that move me.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree. Like
Uh,
there are things that move me to that point, and I'm definitely affected on that level. And I agree with you. That's something that we should not lose.
Yeah, because
Only tears I cry is tattoo tears.
is what?
Tattoo tears.
This coming from the Ghanaian gangster.
That's right.
And don't you forget it.
Yeah.
And don't you forget it. That's right.
The well-spoken, well-mannered Ghanaian gangster.
What to say?
I feel like our society has moved in a direction where people are so oversaturated by media and by just the daily horror of it all that sometimes people just go numb after a while and lose their ability to feel anything. And that can be horrifying in a sense, because I sometimes feel like I would rather feel sad than not feel anything at all. And you know, it's people's losing their ability to feel empathy that can kind of just, you know, just destroy them, and that benefits the worst politicians in the world. Like I just I lost my train of thought.
You were saying you'd rather feel sad than not feel anything at all.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was gonna say something else, but I forgot it. But I think, yeah, I think I sort of made the most important point in a sense. Just, you know, just that we are kind of conditioned to feel nothing in a society where we're just oversaturated with news and oversaturated with outrage, oversaturated with horror and distractions, that we just end up going numb and just tuning it all out, and almost having this sort of ironic detachment, which I feel can be very destructive sometimes.
It's kind of like we're numb to things.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'm creative, so I'm inspired by, you know, creativity, creative writing, things of that nature. And I think that's to my benefit in that I don't find myself not being moved by things that are meant to move me. you know, or inspire some sort of emotion from me. I look for that. You know what I mean? Like I appreciate those things when a writer writes something that affects me on that level, on any level. You know what I mean? If it makes me angry, and that was your intent, then you've done your job. Or if it moves me to sadness, like, you know, that's the experience. That's for me, the point of the ride. You know what I mean? To kind of get what it is that you're trying to give me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I find with myself that that is my nature. I always have been a very emotional person. I feel things very deeply. The highs are high, the
Hmm.
lows are low. I can be sad, I can be happy, I can be angry, and I also appreciate great art, music,
Yep.
literature, poetry, news. You know, good writing, and I feel that my biggest problem is essentially just being plugged in all the time, being plugged into social media constantly, and just sort of sometimes tuning out the world. And maybe it's because I feel things so intensely, but I've been trying more and more to just not be online like for the last 2 hours before I go to bed, or just to like stay off social media for at least a decent chunk of the day and take walks in nature and such, because sometimes I think back and I feel like you know when when I was like 17 or something, and I started posting first on Xanga and then MySpace and then Facebook, and just talking to a bunch of people, frankly a bunch of idiots a lot of the time, who I feel sometimes brought out my worst instincts. And from there I discovered alcohol, and I feel at times like I just lost something that was an essential part of who I am, that I've sort of tried to get back now by being able to just feel those deep feelings again. I'm sorry if
Are
I'm
you saying
getting.
social media was a gateway drug for you?
It isn't a gateway drug so much as just something that happened around around the same time, because like mid to late aughts is around the time when it first started. Well, it actually started for me a few years ahead of others. I feel like I got on social media kind of early, and it ended up taking all my free time instead of reading books or playing music. But I wasn't drinking yet then, and the like alcohol. I've never been a daily drinker, but when I was in college, it just became a way to calm my anxiety. And which and just be able to like just act like I had a confidence. I didn't really, and just deal with my own social awkwardness.
So with social media though, it's interesting because, and I often tell people, you know, a lot of times on the low, like Facebook in particular, is as much an experiment for me as it is, you know, a way to engage with people socially. And I often say, because, you know, back in the day, the thing to say was, you know, don't judge me by my social media or my Facebook profile or what have you. And it's like, well, if you participate long enough, I can actually profile you.
It's true, yeah.
You know, you can say it, you can say what you want, but if you participate in this on this platform long enough, you know, most people really became actively aware of Facebook around 2010. Some people beforehand, but for the most part, 2010 is like the threshold where people just, it really picked up.
Where it
So
broke into the mainstream, and your uncle was on it.
right, right. So we're talking now 10 years, 9 to 10 years of you having an active social media profile. I can profile you. It doesn't mean that that profile that I come up with is going to be completely you, but certainly, a lot of times, this is new, right? This is the brave new world, so to speak, or the uncharted territory, right? Well, now
Yeah.
10 years in, you know, and I kind of look at things because on one hand, I look at social media, my Facebook, as an experiment. So I kind of look at things, and I'll look at it and I'll sit back and I'll say, well, so like I just kind of explore concepts. I remember saying to my friend a couple years back, I said, do you realize that 6 years into social media, 6 years into Facebook, you have a 6-year record of your history, right? So your kid is two. Your kid is two. And for 6 years, for 4 years before you knew you were having a kid, every argument that you had with your boyfriend, you get on social media and, go in about, how your boyfriend sucks or what have you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Every party that you went to, half dressed or what have you, boom, you put the pictures on social media. So in another 10 years, your kid is going to be 12 or 13 and probably have their own social media account and probably be friends with you.